friends. How is everybody today? Thank you for joining us on our coffee and chat. Today we have a fabulous roundtable for you all. We are talking holiday books. 'Tis the season. I am your host, Michelle McAvoy, and I'm going to introduce these wonderful lady authors to you that we have on the program today. So first we have Patricia Toht. Patricia Toht is a poet, a picture book writer, a middle school librarian associate. She's in school right now, as you can see from her background. And she's a former children's bookstore owner. She's the author of 4 picture books. And her holiday book is to Pick a Pine Tree, out in 2017. And who published Pick a Pine Tree? Walker Children's Book. Is that right, Patricia? Can she hear us? No. All right. After Patricia, we'll come back to you, Patricia. After Patricia, we have Nancy. Say hi, Nancy.
Hi. Great to see you, Michelle.
Great to see you. I'm so excited to have you on. So Nancy is a children's book author with many, many children's picture books, including her holiday book, The Queen of the First Christmas. Hold on. I'm just going to... Let Nancy, let Patricia get situated here. All right. So we have Nancy Churnin. Hi, Nancy. So her holiday book, The Queen of the First Christmas Tree with Albert Whitman. She's holding it up for us. And it's a fantastic nonfiction Christmas book about Queen Charlotte in the 1800s and the first Christmas tree in England. How amazing. I love that. Thanks for being on.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Awesome. And then next we have Karen Rostoker-Gruber. Karen is a ventriloquist and a multi-award-winning author of many, many picture books with hundreds of thousands of copies sold. And her holiday book today, Farmer Kobe's Hanukkah Match, was named a National Jewish Book Award finalist. And her other picture books have received numerous accolades. She's a fellow Jersey girl, and I'm very excited to have her here. Hold up your book, Karen. All right. So let's see if Patricia back into the broadcast. I think she was having some technical difficulties. And let's see. Hi, Patricia. Can you hear us? No? Okay. We are live. So, Patricia, I'm going to put you down there until we can get you up and running, okay? So, to get started, let's start off with our first question. Writing in a crowded market, right? So the holiday market is an extremely crowded market. And my question to you, Nancy, let's go to you first. Were you concerned about writing in a crowded market? How do you get inspired to find a holiday theme or holiday story that's different? What do you think?
Well, I didn't go into it in thinking about writing a holiday book, which is interesting. I mean, it's a surprise. I'm just a very curious person, and my specialty is picture book biographies. And I was always curious about how the Christmas tree got to be a tradition. And when I went and did my research and found out about Queen Charlotte that no one had written about before, I got very excited. And then I like to see if the person I'm interested in is actually a good person, did good things. And I found out, well, not only has there not been a picture book about Queen Charlotte, but she was the first royal to make charitable giving part of royal duties. And it wasn't just about a tree. She helped patronize orphanages, hospitals. There's a hospital named for her that still stands, the Queen Charlotte and Chelsea Hospital in London. And the more I read about it, the more I fell in love with her. So it actually just became one of my picture book biographies, but it had that holiday twist that people seem to love. But I truly approached it just because I fell in love with Queen Charlotte and I wanted everyone to know her story.
Fantastic. And so what about you, Karen? What about when you were writing your holiday book? Any thoughts about writing for a crowded market?
Okay, so I couldn't hear anything Nancy said, so I might things. But the Farmer Kobe's Hanukkah Match was actually a sequel to this book. And it was originally called, this is called Rooster Can't Cock-a-Doodle-Doo, but my sequel was called Farmer Ted's Dinner Date. but the editor had left that did Rooster Can Cock-a-Doodle-Doo. So I let it sit for a while. I don't even remember. I don't remember now. I think I took it out in 2014, and I went to my rabbi and I asked him if Farmer Ted's dinner date had any Jewish values in it. And he said it did. He said having compassion for animals and welcoming a guest. So I rewrote Farmer Ted's dinner date and turned it into Farmer Kobe's Hanukkah match and set it on a moshav, the Nahalal moshav in Israel.
Okay. Wow. So it didn't start off as a holiday book.
No. It's a sequel to this book.
And so I'm sorry, I was it your editor or your agent that suggested that you change it?
So I actually published 14 books without an agent.
Okay.
Houses like Dial, Price Stern, Sloan, Marshall, Cavendish. I didn't have an agent that. I just got an agent, and she sold the 2 books that are coming out in 2020. Those are the books that she sold for me, but I didn't have an agent for my 14 books prior.
Gotcha. And so how long did it take you to revise it from what you had originally had and turn it into a holiday book?
Okay. Oh, well, okay, so in 2004, Rooster Can Cock-a-Doodle-Doo came out. And actually, I wrote a sequel for it in 2005, but the editor left, and the new editor didn't like it as much as Rooster Can Cock-a-Doodle-Doo. So I put it aside for 10 years. Then I took it out, talked to the rabbi, and I think I changed it in a couple of months. And then I sent it to Apples and Honey Press. Well, actually, Barham House. I didn't know they were launching Apples and Honey Press at the time, and they were taking David Adler's Hanukkah Cookies with Sprinkles, Kayla and Kugel, written by Ann Kofsky, and they asked to have Farmer Kobe's Hanukkah match, which actually was Farmer Alon's Hanukkah match, and then changed to other things until we found Kobe to be
okay. Gotcha. So 10 years. I love that. So you took it, you took it off the shelf and revised it.
I put it in my filing cabinet for about 10 years and let it just. I knew it was a really good book, but it has to be a good book before you sprinkle in some holiday stuff, right?
Yeah.
I knew it was a good book. I just had to find the right time to bring it out.
Gotcha. And what about you, Nancy? Did your story, what was the sort of process or life of your Queen's First Christmas Tree?
Well, it was finding out, again, it started out with just being curious about how the Christmas tree tradition started, because, listen, we didn't always have that. And kids don't realize that. I love to know how things start.
Yeah.
And when I discovered that it was Queen Charlotte, very often people think it's Queen Victoria, but this was her grandmother. And this, once I found out it was Queen Charlotte, I just became interested in Queen Charlotte as I would any of my other picture book biography subjects. But the tree just gave me a structure to hear about her story. I wanted people to know about her. A lot of kids know about King George III. Obviously, he's the king of the American Revolution and the king of Hamilton. But I love to ask them, but do you know the name of his wife? And it's like, what?
Right.
We didn't know he was married, because the women get left out of the history books. And she was really quite an extraordinary queen. And I just got excited to tell her story. And the story of the tree, to me, was much more a story about kindness, just about wanting to make kids happy than it was anything else. And I interwove it with the story of who she was as a person, somebody who cared about children, who cared about the sick, who cared about helping others. She was not someone who liked dressing up for fancy balls or wearing the jewels. As a matter of fact, they made fun of her in the English court. Her mother-in-law did all that stuff. And she didn't even know English that well, but she was all about kindness. And I felt her story gave kids a different way to think about what it could mean to be royal.
And so in terms of timing, let's talk about timing, ladies, because I think our audience is interested to hear about, if they want to write a holiday book, when do those manuscripts sell to an editor? When do those manuscripts or books typically come out in advance of the holiday? Things like that. I have a friend who has written a holiday book, and it's sort of like, should she expect it to sell in January if it's a winter holiday? Let's talk about timing, Nancy. What was the timing for your book in terms of sale and then in terms of release?
Well, it sold in the fall. I believe it was the fall of 2017, I'm thinking. I'm trying to remember if it was the fall of 2016 or 17, when it sold as part of a two-book deal to Albert Whitman, along with My Charlie Takes His Shot. And they were they were excited about both books, but they were very excited about The Queen. And they made sure to release it in the fall of 2018. So this is a year old.
Okay.
But here's the interesting thing in respect to your question, that while it's available all year round, we notice the sales are very good from the fall through December. And I'm expecting a big drop off January through June. And then fall through December, people love to have this true story about somebody who is kind and does for others. And in her honor, I've created a project called A Kind Holiday. And I've been extending the life of it because kids share kind things they do for others all year long, whatever holidays they celebrate. I had one school share what the kids did for Valentine's Day.
Okay.
They made sure every kid got a Valentine. And that was another way to extend her message throughout the year, because I personally don't envision this as just a holiday Christmas book. I really am hoping that it inspires kids to be kind all year long during whatever holidays they celebrate. And that's what we've been doing.
Okay, so that's really it's interesting to hear about sort of when it was published, and I would imagine that most winter holiday books are probably published in the fall, but that you are working to sort of extend that message. Now, Karen, what about you? When did your holiday Hanukkah book? I guess when did it sell, and when did it release?
It released in August.
Okay.
Let me check. Of August 2005.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah, well, I think Hanukkah was really early that year, so it started selling like in November. But typically, it's 2 or 3 months prior to the holiday that the sales force gets the books, that that they start selling it, on blogs, and it starts getting posted and stuff like that. I think it's 3 months before, because my Tu B'Shvat book that's coming out in 2020 with Carben, the release date is November 1st, 2020, but Tu B'Shvat is until January. So typically that's, and I know that the PR person there wants my PR list, I think this February. So February, March, April, May, that's a long time before for them to start, sending stuff out.
Okay. And now when did it sell to your publisher?
Farmer Kobe's Hanukkah Match?
Yes.
That I don't have that in. I have.
I guess just month wise.
Usually it takes 2 years for a book to come out. So I'm usually sign a contract, and then a book comes out like either 1 year, depending on the publisher, or 2 years after that.
Okay. So if somebody's writing a winter holiday book, they can probably expect it to sell maybe in the fall or winter of the year prior.
Well, there's spring lists and there's fall lists, and that's it usually. So, they start 2 to 3 months before, for news. Well, actually a month before is for newspapers, 3 to 4 months lead times for magazines. And usually a book is already illustrated a year before, because the sales force has to start looking at it and start getting things together.
Okay, so in terms of, let's talk about promotion. So Nancy, you touched upon that a little bit. And Karen, let's start with you. So in terms of promoting a holiday book, what do you typically do to promote the book? When do you start promoting the book? Obviously, Nancy had talked about sort of expanding the life of the book and not just having it around, that one holiday. So Karen, what about you with Farmer Kobe?
Okay. So with Farmer Kobe, I'm actually also a ventriloquist. So I do a lot of.
I love that. That's amazing. Are you going to do a little bit on the show for us or no?
Well, I'd have to ask Maria the puppet because I can't. Frog is sleeping; he's hibernating, but
Okay.
And he's not in this room. I'd have to get Maria, but I do a lot of Hanukkah shows. I do a lot of Passover shows. I do a lot of mitzvah clown shows. And I do a lot of school visits. So if I'm doing a holiday book, like the Hanukkah shows, I start promoting that I'm doing them like about in August.
Okay.
So we had just done a Hanukkah show last weekend. So it just gets really busy. I go to a lot of conferences around the holidays, and then, I do a lot of book signings sometimes in the holidays, Barnes and Noble stuff. I went to Barnes and Noble last weekend, down pretty far away from my house. But last year I did a lot of book signings in a lot of the Barnes and Noble stores around New Jersey. So I do a lot of book signing. I also do a lot of Girl Scouts, Boy Scout troops, and school visits around the holidays.
So you start advertising that in August or September to book it for, I guess it's December is really the time, when late November, early December.
This time, Hanukkah's really late this year, so I had a lot of time.
And what about you, Nancy, in terms of advertising and planning for different holiday events?
Well, I'm very happy. I've had a lot of support from my publisher, Albert Whitman. And by the way, to support something Karen said earlier, it does take about 2 years from the deal to the publication. Now I'm remembering it was about September of 2016. It came out in October of 2018. So, so my publisher, Albert Whitman, actually right now is offering a giveaway. So if you follow them on Facebook, on Twitter, and Instagram, and you share your favorite holiday decoration, whatever holiday you celebrate, then you're entered for a chance to win. Because she's a British queen, I've actually been connecting with a lot of British shops across the country who are they love the fact that it's a story about a queen and that she's connected with Christmas. The Mint Museum in Charlotte, North Carolina, the Charlotte's named for her. They ordered many books that I did book plates for. In terms of in person, locally near me, there's a place called the British Emporium, and they have me out there to present with Father Christmas. We've done that 2 years in a row, which is really fun. He likes the book, and so I'm just. But I like to. I do a lot of author visits. I definitely promote around the holidays, but I do try to emphasize the fact that she's kind, and that's something we should be all year long. And I also really try to expand it so that people know, because this is how I wrote it. It is for everybody. It's for everybody who just wants to do kind things for others at whatever holidays they celebrate.
Right.
And people have taken that to heart.
Right. And so in terms of marketing, I'm going to try to bring Patricia in because I know she's been sitting patiently. I think she got the kinks worked out. So I'm going to try to bring her in. Hopefully there's not too much background noise, hopefully from the school, and she can hear us. Patricia, can you hear us?
I can hear you very well. Can you hear me? I'm so sorry about, we have firewalls in here and it just makes things difficult. So thank you so much for letting me come in late.
No, that's okay. I'm sorry. I know that you've been sitting around there, and I just wanted not to have anybody get distracted while they were talking. So, Patricia, we're so excited to have you into the program.
Thank you, Michelle. And it's been very interesting hearing what Nancy and Karen had to say.
So we're talking about marketing for your holiday book. So for Pick a Pine Tree, in terms of when you start sort of reaching out to folks, is it the same thing around August, November?
That's exactly right. That's a great time to do it, because if you wait too late, you can't get on their calendar. So bookstores need to know in advance. And for some of the more obscure things, sometimes it takes longer for planning. So if I'm going to do something with Park District, excuse me, that takes a while. Or tree farms, they need a little longer lead. So I might contact them a little bit sooner, maybe around June.
And in terms of reaching out, ladies, so I think our audience would love to know sort of how do you go about doing it? So I really like to give a lot of practical advice to our listeners and to the folks in our group. So, a lot of times people think, especially for authors that are very well published, like the three of you, that you have, teams of people that are helping you organize, and your publishers calling bookstores and da-da-da-da. So, and I love that Karen is just sort of laughing. And now she has the puppet with her too. Hi, Maria. Yay. So, in terms of, who would like to go first? In terms of how you go about organizing and reaching out, I think just to give our listeners some real practical takeaways.
I have something funny to say. Actually, we do a lot of the work ourselves. Publishers are really busy. And so I used to call myself Mimi. Well, I used to have a second me. So I used to call myself Mimi, and I would say, Mimi, you book all these. So then when I started, people were like, oh, who's helping you, Karen? Get all these book signings. I'm like, oh, Mimi's doing it. She's my receptionist or my secretary and my helper. And people were like really thinking that I had somebody named Mimi helping me. It's just me and me.
Perfect. You had to sort of step outside yourself in order to embrace the task.
It's a lot of work. I have to send mass emails to all the Barnes and Noble stores, and you have to get all their emails down, and then you have to follow up, and then, and the same with school visits and holiday shows. So I have about, I don't even know, I'm just going to put out, because it was 564 schools in my database. That's JCs, temples, regular schools in my database. I've been slowly every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I put 10 more people in my database. So I friend them, then they give me their emails, and then I can send them my, whatever, my flyers and stuff like that. But it's a lot of work. And
I should mention, Karen, you do this full time.
Yes.
Yeah. So just for our listeners, because I know there's a lot of us like me, and I know, Patricia, you're at school right now working. So, if you're not doing, if you're not writing, and if you're not doing this full time, I don't want anybody here that's listening to feel lesser than because they don't have 500 schools on their list. That is a big task. And even doing that every Monday, Wednesday, Friday is a very big task. So I want to just say, I think you do what you can do for yourself.
Yes.
And Patricia, as you work full time. So how do you go about reaching out and getting those opportunities for events?
I kind of have my go-tos. If you know that there's a place that likes to host you, go back to that one definitely and set them up first, and then try to fill in. I am going to add that if you are with a publisher that does have someone that does PR or marketing, be sure to keep them in the loop. I just send them my list of things that I'm doing, and sometimes they have another connection in that area or something, and we might be able to piggyback on by doing another thing. You can be as creative as you want to. I think that's another fun thing. It doesn't just have to be schools or bookstores. You can reach out in other ways. You have to, I think, take that with a dose of reality that you may not get many people that show up on some of the more obscure things that you do, but it's still fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about you, Nancy, in terms of how do you go about organizing and reaching out for events? And do you do it, or does your publisher do it, or a little bit of both?
I think it's a mixture, but I probably do most of it. And the reality of it is that they expect the author to do most of it. But I do, as Patricia said, you let your marketing person know, because they can give you support. Even if they're only retweeting you and Facebooking you and posting on the page, that's, again, extending that information. With the Queen, I have my regular go-to people. Like, I have a local independent bookstore in Terabang Books, and I have a great relationship with the Barnes and Noble at Lincoln Park that carry my books. But the fun thing with this was I realized this would be of special interest to people, to British Americans or people from England living here. And on my own, I Googled and found out about all the British gift shops. And
Great idea.
Well, yeah, because it's a queen, and everyone is interested in all things royal right now. And you don't have to be British to be interested in the crown and
right.
the King of Hamilton and all this, and Victoria and Albert, and I love all that stuff too. So it's just been carried by these shops all around the country, and I did reach out to all of them, but again, yes, I let my marketing person know, and I'm always open to ideas. And I have this year, I mean, up until January, I was working a full-time job in addition to doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I am doing this full-time, I do have a booking agent called Authors and More.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've also been reaching out for me, but I haven't stopped myself. So I don't expect anybody to do it all for me. It's a team effort.
Yeah, and so I love that, Nancy. So 2 follow-up questions with that. So in terms of the specialty shops, because I think that is an amazing, just an amazing opportunity. So when you reached out to these different specialty shops and they were like, yeah, I'll come for an event, or we're interested in your book, then obviously you would put that shop in connection with your distributor or your publisher, and they take it from there, correct? For the most part.
Well, yes, if they followed up and they wanted to order it, then I did put them in touch with, I checked with my marketing people, how would they order it? What's the best way? And I found out this is the person that they contact. And you have to, it changes all the time because, like, for instance, my publisher just changed distributors. So I have to update. And yes, I do put them in touch, and then they take it from there. They make that contact because I'm not selling the books.
Right. Obviously. Yep. Exactly. So that's really good advice. And I love that you use a booking agent. So Authors and More, for those folks that are listening. And typically a booking agent will take a percentage if you're getting paid for that event. I think it depends on the agency, but I think it's fairly customary to do like a 15 to 20%, I believe is fairly customary.
That is correct. Yes. And it's been wonderful for me because as I've started to do this full time, I've wanted to do a lot more author visits. I mean, and frankly, the special event visits are usually just honorariums or complimentary, but it's the school visits that really have an impact. And so Carol Weitzel, who runs Authors and More, is a former librarian, and she had very good school contacts, particularly in the Texas area where I live. But around the country, she's booked me around the country. I'm going to Charlotte, North Carolina, as a matter of fact.
Wow.
2020. And I mean, it's exciting because in Charlotte, North Carolina, they live in the city that's named for Queen Charlotte. And they live in Mecklenburg County, which is Mecklenburg County is where she grew up in Germany.
Wow.
They're interested in
so
but there's connections.
1 more minute left. It's 12:29. So before we part, I would love to ask each of you sort of recommendations or words of advice for folks that are either writing a holiday manuscript or winter holiday manuscript, because that's what we're talking about today. And whether, I can see them thinking about, is this unique enough? Is this something that would sell? Should I even bother, right? Santa's been written about 1,000 times. Hanukkah, maybe not as much, but there's a ton of Hanukkah books out there as well. So I guess a word of advice for those writers that are listening and hoping to write a children's book. Let's go to Karen.
Do picture book pitch on Twitter. A lot of my friends have had success with that. And also, every time somebody writes a Santa book or anytime somebody writes something about Hanukkah, it's your spin on it. So it might be totally different. So I wouldn't not do something about Santa because it's already been done. And it's your take on the whole book. So it's going to be totally and completely different. And I would still try to sell it. If it's a good book, it will sell and find a home. That's my thing.
Thank you. And Patricia?
I would say, similar to Karen, that there are still unique ways or unique things that you can find about the holidays. So with Pick a Pine Tree, there were so many books about Christmas trees. But what I found is there were not any books that talked about the process of actually turning a pine tree into a Christmas tree. And so despite all of those books out there, I think I checked 30 books out of the library when I was doing my research, all just about Christmas trees, and none of them did that. So sometimes sometimes you can find still a unique little niche that you can write in. And another thing that you could look at is parodies. So I think about Sherry Dusky-Rinker's The 12 Sleighs of Christmas, which is the take on the 12 days of Christmas. So there are ways that you can take something that's really well known out there and you can twist it.
Twist it. I love that. And you know what I'm hearing from both you and Karen is that research is very much a part of it. I mean, I think people sometimes just want to write in a bubble, but I think they also need to realize that folks that are published do a ton of research. You know, you're reading through 30 holiday books to see where maybe your tree book may fit and how it may be different or unique. And Nancy, what about you? Some parting advice.
Absolutely in agreement with what Karen and Patricia have said. I feel you have to be passionate about whatever it is you're writing about. If you're just sort of writing a holiday book because you're trying to sell a holiday book, that's not, you need to have something that you care about passionately. And, you know, for me, what's interesting about this experience was I really wasn't writing for the holiday. I know that sounds funny since this is about holiday books, but I love this queen who was very kind. So it was really a book about kindness and doing for others and being different and not fitting in. And that was really my story. And yes, I did a lot of research. I consulted a royal historian, a professor in Canada, and she's thanked in the book. But it's truly a story about kindness and giving back. If you find that you're writing about something you care about deeply, that will come across. I mean, even if you like to laugh at fun, I mean, if you look at Karen's and Patricia's books, these are things that they care about deeply. And Karen's book is really a book about standing up for your family and standing up for yourself. And, you know, and Patricia's, you know, really reflects her real love of the process and wanting to explain kids to understand things. And this is really a story about kindness.
Yeah. And so importantly, these books are not just holiday books. These books are about so much more. And I think that's sort of the driving point too. And also, you know, for everybody who's listening, their books are not just good for December. So think about these books, you know, and I know that a lot of you have educational guides on your website. So I would just ask, you know, anybody who's listening, you know, obviously look at their books and go to their websites and find out the background and get those educational guides to help you use the book, especially teachers and librarians throughout the year. So ladies, time is up. We're a couple of minutes over, but thank you so much for being on. This was so much fun. And happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah.
Happy holidays.
Bye, guys.
Bye.